Hello and welcome back to Spin Cycle Live. I'm your host, Nathan Hale. Today is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. And boy, do we have quite the stories for you all. But before we get started, I hope you are all having such a great day. You know, this show has been going strong. I love doing it for you all, and I hope that you all enjoy watching it. Make sure that you are following the show on YouTube, Rumble, Instagram, TikTok. Follow me on X at HomeOnATN on all of the platforms. Give me a shout out. You know, send me a message. Tell me how great the show's doing. Right? You know, look out for my tweets. I'm always tweeting stuff. I'm always on the platform doing things. So look out for all that. But let's get right into it with our very first story of the week that comes out of Alabama. So Alabama, this comes from AP News. So Alabama, most of families applying for Alabama's new school vouchers have kids in non-public schools. Yeah, duh. So more than half of families who have applied for Alabama's new school voucher program have children attending a private school or a homeschooling. Numbers that school choice advocates who say flood of applications provides the approach, proves the approach is what parents want. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey's office released application figures Tuesday for the Choice Act, the new program which will help enable families tap state dollars to help pay for private school or homeschooling costs. Families submitted 22,167 applications for a total of 36,873 students. Ivey said that robust number of applications are a sign that, quote, clearly tax-paying Alabama families want school choice. The Choice Act, Alabama's Educational Savings Program Act, will allow more tax-paying Alabama families and the opportunity to choose a school that meets their child's individual needs. We are highly encouraged by the strong response in 1 year of the program, Ivey said in a statement about the application numbers. The substantial number of applications raises the possibility that the state will exhaust the available $100 million in funding for the first year of the program, and that lawmakers will look to put additional money into the program. The numbers showed that more than half of the applications come from students who are already attending a private school or being homeschooled. Those of 36,000 students, 10,000 of which are from public schools, 10,000 are from public schools, 15 are from private, and 9,000 are homeschooled. Alabama's Choice Act, or Creating Hope and Opportunity for Our Students Education Act of 2024, will provide eligible families with as much as $7,000 in state money through education savings accounts for private school tuition or costs at a participating school. Parents could also get up to $2,000 from homeschool expenses. The first 500 slots are reserved for families of students with disabilities. Eligibility is initially limited to families earning up to 3,000% of the federal poverty level, which is about $77,000 for a family of three. The income cap will go away in 2027, but lower income families and families with students with disabilities would have priority for funds. I think this is great. You know, I think that we're going to see schools in Alabama start to get better following the other national trends in the country. When states have implemented school choice, schools have gotten better in the state. I mean, Florida used to be one of the last states in education. Now they're number one in education. This is all because they implemented school choice policies, right, in the state. So, you know, this is great. $2,000 if you want to homeschool your kids. You know, I was homeschooled K through 12, right? $2,000 would have gone a long way in helping my parents out with the expense of homeschool education, or we didn't get any money from the state for any reason, right? And not that I'm an advocate in giving handouts, and I feel like some conservatives may have taken the approach that who might be more against school choice of, hey, this is just government handing out money. But the money is already there, right, from public schools. We're just giving it, instead of giving it directly to the schools, it's going to the student first, and then parents can decide where they want to send their kids. I love that the headline is all about how it's somehow a surprise that the majority of these vouchers are being used by parents who are already putting their kids into private schools or homeschooling them already, when the reality is, if you've taken the investment into your kids' education, right, you probably realize how awful the public school system is, and you've pulled them out and you sent them to a school that has better opportunities, or you're doing it yourself, right? It's no surprise to me that the majority of people who are taking advantage of this new voucher system are already heavily invested in their kids' education to the point where they're putting their money where their mouth is already by sending their kids to private school, right? The great thing about programs like this is those families were probably getting by fine with having their kids in public or with having their kids in private school or homeschooling them. But this money is going to help them to retain more of their personal income and not spend it towards their kids' education, because we've made a point in this country that the state pays for education, at least K through 12 education, at least for public schools. And it's also going to benefit a whole bunch of parents who didn't have the money or didn't have the amount of disposable income to be able to send their kid to a private school or be able to homeschool themselves, right? Who are in that lower income category. It's going to help enable them to do that, right? So they might be investing in their kids' education just as heavily as some of these other parents are who are already homeschooling or who are already sending their kid to a private school. But now they're being given the capital to go and do those things. So this is great job, Alabama, for putting these programs in place. And that's all I have to say about that. So a judge is ordering the White House to reinstate the AP to the press pool. This is from the Daily Wire. U.S. District Judge Trevor McFadden ruled on Tuesday afternoon that President Donald Trump and his administration had to allow the Associated Press access to White House spaces following a week-long ban over the outlet's refusal to refer to the Gulf of America by its new name in print. McFadden, who was appointed by President Trump, argued that the First Amendment applied and that if other credentialed outlets were given access to space in the White House or aboard Air Force One, that the administration could not selectively bar the Associated Press over a difference of opinion. So my feeling on this whole thing is I don't have the biggest issue with the Associated Press. I mean, we just read an Associated Press story. I use their outlet fairly regularly for certain stories. I don't really have a major issue with them. I look at all news with a lot of scrutiny. I mean, even from outlets like the Daily Wire or, just I look at news under scrutiny with a grain of salt from every single outlet. And if something doesn't seem right to me, if it doesn't pass the smell test, I go and look it up and research it myself, right? The thing that stands out to me about a case like this is what happens when the White House wants to bring in like InfoWars to the press room, right? Are they now required to have a seat within the press room to be in the press pool to follow Trump to his events and everything, right? Or is that now a First Amendment violation, right? Where do we draw I want to know where the line is between the AP and any other news outlet out there, right? I mean, the Daily Wire, for example, they are just as big as a lot of major networks out there. I mean, the Daily Wire shows get viewership greater than a lot of mainstream media outlets do right now. I mean, is it a First Amendment violation that if they request to be in the press pool and they're denied, is that now a First Amendment violation, right? Because they're just as credentialed as any other news outlet out there. I mean, they've established themselves for years. They post reliable, good news to their services, right? They have shows. I mean, they're a big organization, right? So where is the line between wherever the AP is and every other news outlet, right? What's that Overton window looking like that prevents other news outlets that we actually don't want in the newsroom to be in there, right? So that's what I want to know. And I also don't see how this is a First Amendment violation. This is not saying that the AP cannot report on anything they want, right? They're not saying that they can't call it the Gulf of Mexico all they want. They're just saying, hey, your privilege to be here in the White House is being revoked. And I suppose the argument that is made by defenders of the AP is that, oh, well, The AP is using their First Amendment right to publish what they want on their platform and call it the Gulf of Mexico. And because of that, government is now taking retaliation against the AP, right? So they are retaliating against the AP's First Amendment right to be able to publish whatever the heck they want. So I suppose that is possibly the argument that defenders of the AP are using. I don't really see it here. It wasn't like they were kicked out of the press room. They were kicked out of the press pool. Those are different things, right? The AP's still in the press room. They're still having their questions answered. They're just not in the Oval Office anymore, right? So I don't know. I mean, I think that I'd like to point out that this was a Trump appointed judge, by the way. So I've seen a lot of people saying like, oh, these crazy radical leftist judges who are, defying the Trump administration. This is a Trump administration judge, right? So I don't know. I disagree with the ruling. I stand with what the president has asked for. Like I said, I don't really have a big issue with the AP, but I mean, I think it's his choice as to who he wants to have in the press pool or not. If not, I think that we need to have quantifiable lists of what defines a news organization that's allowed to be in that press pool. Because what's going to happen when the next Democrat comes into office and they want to define their own press pool, right? Now all of a sudden the right's going to be like, okay, hey, why are these outlets in the press pool with you all, right? So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. All right. Next story is from the National Review. This is about Tulsi Gabbard. So Tulsi Gabbard, love Tulsi. Tulsi's great. Love her to pieces. So Gabbard launched his task force to rebuild trust in intelligence community declassifying docs. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is establishing a new task force that will address the politicalization of the intelligence community and declassify documents in accordance with President Trump's executive orders. Gabbard announced Tuesday the formation of the Directors and Initiatives Group to investigate the weaponization of the intelligence community, review documents for declassification, and get rid of the administrative bloat. Quote, in order to rebuild trust in the intelligence community and execute the task required by President Trump's intelligence-related executive orders, I established the Directors and Initiatives Group to bring about transparency and accountability across the IC. Gabbard said, quote, we are already identifying waste spending in real time, streamlining outdated processes, reviewing documents for declassification, and leading ongoing efforts to root out abuses of power and politicalization. Gabbard's office is also working on downsizing the intelligence bureaucracy and declassifying documents related to the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. And the Trump administration already declassified a tranche of documents on the JFK assassination in November 1963, but very little new information came out about gunman Harvey Lee Oswald's killing. Trump ordered the documents to be declassified at the start of his presidency after decades of conspiracy theories about all three assassinations captured the public's imagination and remained potent in public opinion polling. The biggest thing, in my opinion, that Tulsi Gabbard could prove and to get the trust back of Americans in the intelligence community is prove for a fact that they have stopped spying on Americans. We need to bring Edward. We need to allow Edward Snowden to come back into the United States, right? Why are we still willing to prosecute him? Why isn't he back here? If I was the director of national intelligence, I would hire a ton of these guys to go through national intelligence records and find all of the abuses of power within them. I wouldn't trust anyone else other than the whistleblowers themselves to find these things, right? They were brave enough to speak up before. The national intelligence community would regain a ton of trust from the American people if they proved for a fact that they are no longer spying on the American people, on everyday Americans who have not committed a crime. If they could prove for a fact that all of those policies that have been put in place to spy on innocent citizens of the US, I'm not so concerned about worldwide citizens. I care about Americans first. They could prove that Americans are no longer being spied on for a fact, and that will never happen again. They would have my trust back right there. If Tulsi Gabbard came out and told us all, hey, all those programs that have been put in place, all that staff that were doing those jobs, that were spying on you, the American people, they are done, released information on why they were being spied on in the first place, and just gave us transparency there, I would have a lot of trust put back in place into the hands of government. But that hasn't happened, and I'm sure it's still happening on a regular basis, right? I am not the least bit I'm extremely concerned over the administrative state and spying on Americans. I think that's a big breach of trust, right? I mean, we've been talking about this stuff for years, and there's been no change because of it. So if something like that happened, that I think would be a big move. And having government just admit that they were wrong to do those things, right? Telling us what is actually happening with all these FISA courts where we're getting warrants to spy on people without it being public at all, especially just innocent Americans, is just the biggest breach of trust I've ever heard, especially from government. I think it's one of the biggest travesties in the United States government system right now that we are allowing this to continue to go on and hasn't been stopped. So I think, Tulsi, if you really want to get back the trust of Americans, stop the nanny state, get rid of that, right? Nobody wants to be spied on, right? Why are you spying on me? I'm doing nothing. I'm an innocent citizen. I haven't done anything. What's going on? So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. But I mean, I think this is great. If they want to start declassifying more documents, I think it's wonderful. I hope there's actually stuff in them. We got the Kennedy files, and like this article said, there really wasn't anything in there. I think it's good that they're being released, but I think that a lot of people still have the feeling that, hey, was it all not released? There was just a lot up in the air about where these documents are at and where they're coming from. Same thing with the Epstein list. I mean, I doubt we're ever going to actually get the Epstein list. I'd love to eat my words on that one, but I really would be. But we'll see how that all goes. So that's all I have to say about that. All right. So this comes from the New York Post. So Trump pauses tariff hikes for 90 days against most countries, but raises China rate to 125% over, quote, lack of respect in escalating trade war. President Trump announced Wednesday that his highlighted, quote, reciprocal tariff scheme was being paused for 90 days in response to overtures from dozens of countries. But duties on China imports would be heightened to 125% due to a lack of respect from Beijing. Quote, I have authorized a 90-day pause on the substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period, a 10%, also effective immediately. Trump wrote on the Truth Social, sending Wall Street majors indexes soaring. And it's true. It's true. If you go look at the stock market right now, stocks just shot through the roof for like every company at like 12.15 today. It's crazy to look at. The president announced his reciprocal tariff rates customized for each country exactly 1 week earlier, leaving the country scrambling to negotiate better terms with the U.S. Quote, more than 75 countries, unquote, have contacted the White House to discuss one-on-one trade deals, Trump claimed. But China, who initially got hit with a 34% tariff increase that was raised to 84% at 12:01 on Wednesday, chose to levy the same rate against U.S. goods, leading Trump to escalate the trade war between the world's two largest economies. Quote, based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world markets, I'm hereby raising the tariffs charged to China by the United States of America to 125% effective immediately, Trump began to post. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. The president's announcement locks in a 10% U.S. tariff rate on most imports, including China and Mexico, until July 8th, after Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent predicted earlier this week it could take until June for the administration to iron out so-called tailor-made deals for all nations interested. This was his strategy all along, Bessent told reporters outside the White House following Trump's Wednesday announcement, denying that the pause was due to America's stock markets erasing trillions of dollars in value during the previous 4 trading days. Quote, Trump created maximum negotiation leverage, the Treasury Secretary insisted. I'm only interested to see where this all goes. Like I said, I'm interested to see what the long-term ramifications of these tariffs are going to be. I hope they're going to be good, but 125% on Chinese goods is a lot, and it's definitely going to impact Americans in the short term. So we'll see how much it actually impacts them. But I'm holding out my opinions on if the tariffs are good or bad until at least early next year, until January. Just to see how they play out. So I'm hoping by then that they have some quantifiable evidence that show that they are working, and we can send congressmen out to say that they are working, and we continue to win elections. But this is going to be a big thing that congressmen are held up on going into the 2026 midterms, is us being hammered by tariffs. And if they are still affecting Americans negatively in the next year or so, it's going to be a bloodbath in the midterms. I mean, it's just going to be, because all the Democrats are going to be able to talk about is that Republicans raise the prices of things, even though they might be working slightly. There needs to be a lot of proof that shows that these tariffs are positively impacting Americans in the long run. By the time that Congress starts going on campaign, it's going to start happening very soon. And it's critical that Trump keeps his majority in both houses to continue to get things passed in an efficient way, and that we expand those majorities. So having lots of wins in the House going into 2026 will be a big deal to keep control of that chamber. That's all I have to say about that. We're going to move on to our last story, which comes from the AP once again. Quote, appeals court clears way for the Trump administration to fire thousands of probationary workers. A federal appeals court cleared the way Wednesday for President Donald Trump's administration to fire thousands of probationary workers, halting a judge's order requiring them to be reinstated in a legal win for Trump's effort to dramatically downsize the federal workforce. The decision comes a day after a similar order from the Supreme Court and another lawsuit filed over mass firings. A split panel for the 4th U.S. Supreme Court of Appeals found the government will probably win by showing the mass firings must be appealed through a separate employment process rather than fought out in federal court. The decision comes in a lawsuit filed by nearly 24 states that argued the mass firings will cause irreparable burdens and expenses to support recent unemployed workers. They said at least 24,000 probationary employees have been terminated since Trump took office in January. This is great. Look, Trump runs the bureaucracy. He's supposed to be in charge of all this. And he wants to fire a whole bunch of people. He should have the right to do that. I have no issue with this whatsoever. And what this will also show is, hey, this is 24,000 people that are no longer in the workforce just like that. Do we really need them? Were they really necessary to have around? Who knows? We shall see. My guess is that we will find where we do need that extra employment, and we're going to find that a lot of areas of government we actually didn't need those extra employees. But we'll see how it goes, and we might be hearing, hey, we thought we didn't need 24,000. Turns out we actually don't need 20,000, or maybe we don't need 10,000, right? And we rehire a whole bunch of people, or we hire in a bunch of new staff to refill those positions. So, and this is great. It's a great win for the Trump team. This is just proving that he has the right to do what he wants with the bureaucracy. He leads it up. right? He should be allowed to do what he wants within his administration. He should not have to get the approval of Congress or the courts for every little thing he wants to do, right? He's the commander in chief, right? He's the head of the bureaucracy of the United States. He leads the executive branch. He's in charge of all of this. So I have no problems whatsoever. And that's all I have to say about that. And with that, that is the end of today's episode of Spin Cycle Live. Please join us again on Monday. We'll be back here once again, our regularly scheduled time, to talk even more about all the latest news stories happening here in the United States. But with that, I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I have been Nathan Hale. This has been Spin Cycle Live. Follow us on X, Instagram, TikTok, Rumble, YouTube, all the social media platforms. I'm at Homo Nathan on those platforms. You can find the show at Spin Cycle Live on several of those. Go follow me on X, on Twitter, and tweet at me. Tell me what you like about the show. Follow my stuff. That's where I'm most accessible at. Send me a message. Tell me how great I'm doing. But I hope that you're enjoying the show. And if you have any suggestions on how we can make the show even better, let me know. But with that, I have been Nathan Hale. This has been Spin Cycle Live. We will see you back here on Monday. With that, have a great day. Peace out.